Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
How's
amazing.
that sound? Yes,
That's working.
beautiful.
Ow,
All right,
ow,
woo!
ow.
Welcome, welcome.
Our names are Virginia,
And Emmy, hi.
and we are the co-editors-in-chief of Sunset Press.
We like to call ourselves the idiots in chief, but editors.
Thank you all so much for joining us today to help celebrate the launch of our Spring 2021 collection and the books of Tariq Thompson, Micah Kim, and Liv Kane.
Woo! So yeah, we decided as the intro to the event today that we're just going to read you our press acknowledgments. They are directly from our heart, and we are very excited to share it with you. It gives a sense of what our organization is, how we work, and also explains sort of the unconventional nature of this past year. So, okay. At Sunset Press, we live in the golden hour of writing, which is to say, we embrace the warmth and possibility of language.
Established in 2019, Sunset Press is Kenyan's first ever student-run publishing press committed to publishing long-form work from emerging and underrepresented voices on campus. Sunset's core principles are inclusivity, community, and our collective trust in the creative process. Our staff is composed of artists who believe in the power of words to incite, inspire, and bring us together.
We publish individual books by individual student authors. Our model reflects an equal commitment to each fundamental aspect of the creative process. That means reading, writing, workshopping, and editing. We pair each writer with a personal editorial team who invests in the drafting, revising, and copy editing processes of their manuscript. Writers then collaborate with art and design editors to visualize and actualize their words and their physical form.
The books that we're celebrating today were originally intended for publication in April 2020, but due to the pandemic, our editorial staff and writers seized the opportunity to extend their creative processes into this year, persevering through unimaginable challenges.
Our deepest thanks go to our editorial teams and our brilliant Sunset writers, Liv Kane, Micah Kim, and Tariq Thompson. Woo-hoo! Yes. In this difficult year, our Sunset Press staff followed their lead, finding inspiration in their commitment to their own craft and their literary successes. We want to thank our entire team for their persistence and work ethic against all odds. Looking at our lineage, we want to thank the Sunset staff who came before us too, who continue to motivate and shape our efforts to this very day.
We are so proud to finally reach the culmination of the past year and a half of dedication to our writers' manuscripts. We are even more excited to watch as these books build upon the Sunset Press literary tradition and expand our collection.
Our final thanks goes to you, reader, audience member, Kenyan student, who picked up this book, who attended this event, and who believed in its significance. We hope you stick around for more golden words to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, oh my gosh. We're going to kick off the reading today with Micah Kim. Yes? Beautiful. Here's Micah Kim.
Oh, well. But even before Micah Kim, we'll have Grace Smith introduce Micah.
Hey y'all, I'm Gray. I'm going to be introducing Micah Kim, who is our fiction writer. If you don't know Micah's work, he writes short stories of the horror genre. So I first started working with Micah in 2 years ago, I guess now, which is almost 2 years ago, which is crazy. But the first time that I read his work, which was like in the Sunset submissions, I honestly felt like there was something really special about his writing, and I was like, yeah, I definitely want to work with this kid. I think his writing kind of draws you in and makes you want to like stay in the world of his stories, even though the world of his stories is objectively terrifying, so there's definitely something to be said for that. I'm really grateful to have been able to work with Micah for the past 2 years and to see him grow as both a writer and as a person. And I hope that you all are as enamored with Micah's horror stories as I am. So thank you, and Micah.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gray. I'm really happy right now, but I need to calm down and be spooky about this. this story is the second story in the collection, and a little backstory for this. This is a story about being lost at sea, which is an allegory for McBride Residence Hall. I buried Mac as best I could. He sank calmly into the sea, his arms crossed, shirt wrapped over his face. 2 days later, his body swelled up and surfaced, face down, 10 meters from my raft. Once more we were adrift together. My yellow inflatable raft floated in the open water. Around us was the bright turquoise sea, our home since the plane crash. The emergency raft was built for 10 people to survive, or one to drift in luxury. Around it lay life preservers tied to rope, as well as our salt-stiffened life vests. Mac and I had been wearing them when we met, pulled from the frothing waves by a flight attendant. They'd placed us in safety and swam back towards the other raft, which was inflating closer to the floating hulk of the airliner. Wind-whipped rain had sliced our eyes as we peered into the storm, and just then, a wave swallowed the airliner and toppled the other raft. Then suddenly we'd been borne aloft, gripping the sides of the raft as the sea pulled us skyward and dragged us thunderously down. After an eternity of lurching, we'd sat up and looked out upon water everywhere. The sea had been peaceful since. Cloudless skies stretched to the far horizon, enrapturing us in a world of nowhere. Mac bobbed gently, his limbs hanging in the surf. It could be worse, Mac had said when he was alive, lounging over the side of the raft. I'd rolled over and faced him then. How? We could have really pointy elbows. What? No, wait, hear me out, he said, fighting to keep a straight face. Pointy elbows. So, like, the raft would pop if we poked it. I'd rubbed my chin and nodded. I concur. We held it together for a few seconds before bursting out laughing, shaking our heads and then laughing at the laughter. With Mac gone, all I could manage was a faint chuckle. I pulled down my hat as the sun poured light into the cracks of my burned skin. Trying to get comfortable, I peeled myself up and moved to the center of the raft. My weight depressed it slightly more than last week. The raft was deflating, but too slowly now to matter. We'll starve before we sink, Mac had told me. I'd give us 40 days before. He cut himself off with a wave of the hand that said, "You know what happens next, but let's please not say it." The rations lay around me, scavenged from whatever floated near the wreck, airline peanuts and pretzels and a dwindling gallon jug of water. I reached for the open package of pretzels and drew out the last stale, softened piece, covering it with my other hand so the wind couldn't snatch the salt away. I pressed it into my mouth and worked around, turning it with my tongue until it melted. "What's the deal with airline food?" I asked aloud. Mac did not laugh. We'd told the joke too many times. I crumpled up the empty bag and tossed it into the water. It floated alongside 20 other bags just like it. Mac's corpse drifted close behind. "Adrift was I for 60 days, and not a soul did come, and at the end of 60 days I drunk up all the rum." Mac, a week before he starved. 3 days later, a new stench floated among the salty breezes. Mac's body had begun to waste in the warm water. The waves rocked him gently, dislodging some of the gas that had bloated his organs and forced him to the surface. We were pressed into the stillest part of the sea, where no winds blew and even the sunlight fell flat on the surface of the water. There were no gulls or albatrosses or even sharks, leaving time and waves to unmake him. His hair splayed out on the water's surface, giving him a mossy halo. A shirt served as a crude burial shroud, hiding his face. His bare back blistered in the sun, and it wouldn't be long before he broke open and sunk to be strewn, over time, across the seafloor. "You'll be just fine," I murmured to him. I wasn't trying to keep him alive, but talking to something that was once alive seemed a lot healthier than talking to something that never was alive, or worse, was myself. I finished a box of peanuts, named it Wilson, and tossed it overboard. Bits of garbage trailed our raft like ducklings. Eventually, I set my hand to the water and paddled away from Mac as hard as I could. It only seemed respectful to try to bury him, horizontally, if not vertically, the way we'd buried ourselves from the rest of the world we knew. He floated along, never far behind. It played like a cruel joke. We couldn't lose each other in all this sea. Less than a day had passed before I gave up. Days were all I had to measure time anymore, and I needed to spare the energy to continue through them. There was a new economy to my movements. It felt like my flesh pulled away with every motion, my brain sparking to pieces. I stared into the blank blue sky and decayed thoughts into memories. I laid for hours until the feelings inside me pent up and burst. I placed the materials into one side of the raft, balancing it out as I sat on the opposite edge and breathed in deeply. The wide, inviting sea stretched around me, endless, drowning paradise. I lowered my pants and shitted into the tropical sea. When Mac was alive, it was a lot easier to balance. Like most shits, this action summoned a memory. At the sea's first calming, light had laced the waters, bearing us forward. My memory fell down, down, and splashed beneath the waves. Lucky us, being in good company, I said, spreading my arms. Life at sea doesn't need much else, just eating, drinking, all this living space, and the unmentionables. Mac had raised an eyebrow. Unmentionables? Shitting and pissing, I'd said, smiling. He nodded sagely, our God-given right. We laughed, which burned calories, and talked until night mired us in darkened stars. Those were conversations I saved energy on now, and Mac could laugh all he wanted. I pulled my pants up and looked at Mac. Water had softened him. Oh, we've been set adrifting men forevermore to roam. We'll never leave the ship again, the sea's our only home. In the days before he died, Mac had been trying to write a sea shanty. We'd spend a day lying around the raft, talking about what made a good chant. Might be about the beat, he'd said, something to hoist ropes to. Or maybe it's about the lyrics. If they're telling some grand story, people have to sing along, right? Or, he'd added, folding his hands behind his head, maybe it's just a damn jaunty accordion. What do you think? I'd been facing the sea, drumming my fingers on the rubber tube lining. I don't know. Come on, you've got something to add, right? What do you dance to? What's your groove? He'd had an incorrigible smile, which I'd envied. The best shanty is probably whatever takes the most people, I concluded after some thought. The more the merrier. He'd spread his hands. Guess we're limited by circumstance, then. We sure are. The wind stirred for the first time, catching in the bags of the peanuts that littered the surface of the water, setting off a cellophane crackling. Mac's body paled as his internal heat leached away and blood dropped into the capillaries. There were no ropes to hoist, no sail to capture the breeze. Days and conversations passed through us as we drifted around, and it had been easy to smile when all our conversations ended the same way, with us sitting across from each other and laughing. We did all that we could to end up laughing. I'm going to teach you to sing in harmony, Mac had said, waggling his finger at me. We'll be the most cultured castaways alive. Mac was still cultured, if not alive. He'd made a supremely catchy tune. As I laid spread eagle in the raft, I found myself humming along. I wrote a note with careful hand, please come to rescue me. I corked it in a bottle and I threw it out to sea. And after I had waited well, the bottle back did come. I drank it down and shouted, hell, this paper tastes like rum. A storm rushed like a knife across the water. The waters blackened and sizzled with the pockmarks of rain, obsidian crests shattering against the raft. I laid flat with my mouth open, tasting each drop like honey rolling over my skin. Still, the sea soaked up most of the sky, and for that I would never forgive it. It was an adventurer's trial, like the siren's call. To be so thirsty and to have so much water around you, I had to resist the urge to dive overboard and drink up the whole ocean. Mac probably wouldn't have stopped me. 2 regular folks surviving at sea, he had said on a calmer day, leaning back to touch the water. What a story. Would anyone believe it? They'd better, I responded. Otherwise there wouldn't be any point living it, would there? Well, a good story wouldn't really make this worthwhile, Mac continued, scratching his neck. We have 2 options, basically. Option 1, we can get down and out about our experiences now and just leave it at that. Option 2, we think of how we'll tell it in the future. What tales we can spin, you know? It might be even simpler than that, I'd replied. We live or we die. He turned away then, closed his eyes and frowned. He'd been angry with me, which was fair. I don't know why I'd said that. We'd known all along what would happen, but to say so was a breach in trust. And so our adventure had crumbled. Mac had stopped eating. He'd finished his song through the chorus in a low, lilting voice. Oh, we've been set adrifting men forevermore to roam. We'll never leave this ship again, the sea's our only home. It's not that I think we're dying, I told him one day as the sun was setting. The words had lurched out from the lull of sea and song, landing on empty space. Mac had sighed and rolled over to sleep, not wanting to talk about it, or at least not to me. I wanted to know what he'd been thinking that night. I wanted him to yell at me for even mentioning death, but the unmentionables find a way through. By morning, Mac's shoulder had gone cold. Alone in the raft, I felt the rain soak my clothes, chilling me through. When the storm had passed, I took off my shirt and wrung what water I could into my mouth. The empty peanut and pretzel bags had all been sunk by the waves. Only the hardiest sailors remained. Mac's body had given way gently, like foam breaking apart on the waves. There was blood in the water, in shapes I could not make out. His skin hung down now over the back of his rib cage, raw, festering flesh. Bacteria decomposed it, forming green spots on his pale back that I watched grow. We'd run out of food. I discarded the final peanut bag and laid still, calm. I was alone now, so there was no crisis. There was nothing to fear. I spread out in the raft. Night came again. Stars crowded the darkness, and I laid awake in the raft, trying not to trace my memories along their paths, trying not to think at all. We had never considered the stars because neither of us knew the constellations. We were never wayfarers. We knew no way home. All we had done with our journey was drift uselessly, shitting and pissing and dying. In the dark, Mac looked peaceful, like sugar dissolving. He drifted closer. His shanty flitted through my head, touching each memory with a deep chime. The tune started rolling in my throat, the way a concert hall swells before the overture. I sang the shanty in a failing voice, sliding from note to note like water in a bowl. Sounds spilled from the raft and into the night. My head was filled with the past and present of being lost with and without him. Tears would do nothing but waste salt, but I cried anyway. The vibrations filled my chest and numbed it from the inside. A hand gripped the side of the raft. I peered over the edge and saw Mac's head, raised above the water. His jaw had decayed into a bony smile with a dark, blood-stained shine. Strips of flesh hung off it and dripped salt water. His eyes were gone. "Well, don't stop there," he said, grinning. "You've got something to add, right?" I smiled. It took a while to find the words I wanted, but eventually my lips could form them. "We're casting off, we castaways, we drift because we must. Explore until we've passed away and sing until we're dust." We burst into laughter, fighting for breath to continue the chorus. The song lurched and jaunted on, trailing across the still water. We were two off-key sirens, belting for an empty sea. Mac's teeth fell out and splashed into the wake, his jawbone loosening with every verse. Neither of us minded that he was dead. We had decided to no longer speak of it. "Oh, we've been set a-drifting men forevermore to roam. We'll never leave this ship again, the sea's our only home." We gave it a big finish and ended with laughter, as we always did. Mac went quiet in his familiar way, skin squishing as he pulled himself closer. His hand reached up and grabbed my wrist. I grabbed back and pulled him out of the water. Half of him sloughed away in the dark sea. Blood and skin sunk into the ocean, while the rest was borne carefully upwards. I set him down inside the raft, letting it fill from the wound of his worn-open chest. In the starlight, he looked almost freshly dead. There were stories about this, too. Tales of people who could not relinquish the dead. There were travelers who needed each other to survive. We were no different. I bit into his arm. The softened flesh tore away like peach skin. I chewed and hummed in between bites, thinking up more lyrics in my head. There were endless possibilities, endless memories. I ate Mac clean to the bone. When I was done, we smiled, bloody and raw from salt water. Then the tune rolled into us once again. We swayed in our raft and pushed our song up through the sky. It swooped around, curled through us like trade winds. We held each other steady and shantied to death. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Micah. That was beautiful. Your voice is also amazing. I didn't know you could also sing. Okay, so now we're moving on to Tariq's reading. Yes, applause. Kai Lorenz, who was Tariq's editor, associate editor of the workshop, is not here to read their introduction, so I will be reading it on their behalf. So try and imagine it's Kai. So today I have the greatest pleasure of introducing by proxy Tariq Thompson. Tariq is a Black poet from Memphis, Tennessee. He is both an associate and social media intern for the Kenyon Review, and serves as the social media editor for Shade Literary Arts. He is the recipient of the 2020 Adroit Prize for Poetry and the Academy of American Poets Prize from Kenyon College. Aside from poetry, his loves include Pokemon and the Last of Us franchise. And today I have the honor of adding to that list of accolades the author of his debut chapbook, Lone Lily. Before I became his editor, I first met Tariq at Cholitos in fall 2019, a classic Kenyan meet cute. I overheard him gushing about his dream of bringing the poet Morgan Parker to campus. What struck me in that moment is the same thing that continues to impress me about Tariq today, their devotion to sharing this curiosity and love for poetry with his community. This chapbook breathes life into this curiosity and compassion toward himself, his family, and his history. This dedication to always learn more, read more, and write better has never stopped for over the year and a half that we've been working on this project. In the early stages of this manuscript, we held weekly workshops on New Side, where we spent hours just reading the work of other poets to cultivate a dynamic rooted in vulnerability and a genuine excitement for poetry. I am so proud of our general workshop group. Nassim, Michaela, and Virginia challenged Tariq to evolve beyond his original project into the chapbook Lone Lily is today. Even up until the final weeks before publication, Tariq was emailing me with new drafts of poems that they wanted to squeeze in, followed by a text at 4 a.m. saying, "Please don't be mad at me, but..." With Lone Lily, Tariq never stopped working on a draft until it felt right in his soul, even if this meant not sleeping for the majority of their senior year. For the record, Tariq, I will never be mad about your wholehearted dedication, despite the whiplash and heartburn you may have caused me. Finally, despite the challenges and roadblocks the past year and a half has thrown your way, we did it. You did it, Tariq. Congratulations. Please join me in welcoming Tariq Thompson.
This is the recording camera. Oh, thank you, Kai. I love you. Can you all hear me? Okay. Hi, I'm Tariq, and sorry, that was a lot. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your finals to come and see us read. Micah, where are you? There you are. That really freaked me out. Thank you. So today, oh, hi Mom. I have 4 poems for you today. The first of which is the title poem, titled Lone Lily. Lone Lily. The blues say a bouquet is for women ready to leave. A bouquet's brilliance is measured by the number of leaves, not the flowers. A meadow is a field, the same way loneliness is power. When I'm lonely, I buy bunches of lilies to stuff in my mouth. I lily language into something I can gift my mother. Something a woman can wear on her head. This poem was meant to be read with a lilt. I made this for my mother. I tell her, loneliness is not forever. But what if it is? She mouths. But what if it is? The next poem I'm reading today is titled, On Their Birthday, Suge Knight and My Daddy Discuss Forgiveness. For years, crime and cry seemed like the same word. You can be and do crime. I suppose you can be a cry too, a warning. Wailing, I think, should be seen as a signal to the self. There is a whale in the ocean everyone calls lonely. Its cries, like a child, are heard by no one. It's talking to itself. Ignoring the fact that it is a whale, ignoring the fact that it lurks, I see myself. It is real gangster to be alone. This way, you answer to no one. My baby boy came into this world screaming, and rocking him in my arms, I named him the morning sun. I caved and loved him. I left. One evening, puffing weed crumbles into my chest. I remembered the dawn, the light, greeting the clouds, greeting the moon, yet every night, leaving. Thank you. The next poem I'll read, if I can find it, here it is titled, On Our Birthday, Malcolm X and I Discussed the Means, which is timely because my birthday is next Wednesday. On our birthday, Malcolm X and I discussed the means. Any so-called Negro or nigger or black hope to remain alive must first figure his place amongst his people, meaning those steeped in steeples, the stalwarts, the mean-mannered individuals. They named me blood, kin, brother, son. In the southern heat, they asked me to eat the flesh of another man and called this the means. They told me to drown myself and called this necessary. Before God, there was some kind of dark, and after, some kind of distance. The claustrophobia in the word rhythm compelled me to kneel. Before what? I'm unsure, but I am from Memphis. In the southern deep, I felt the buzzing of blues baritones. I learned a long time ago that you were murdered in a ballroom, and I can picture you waltzing on a grave. Thank you. If I can find this last one. Here it is. This poem is titled, Woo! No! It is titled Woo No. On our birthday, there's also an ant on the mic, so hi. On our birthday, Lorraine Hansberry and I discussed sunlight. In my youth, I swallowed watermelon seeds and panicked. Visions of striped fruit taking root in my belly plagued me. Mama told me nothing grows without sunlight, so I learned dark lived in me. Oh, Lorraine, I have been called strange and fruity too. Melon and lemon, apple, mango, pine, cherry, bananas, passion, black, and berry. You know, it haunts me that so many versions of strange fruit exist. In Nina's, she sings the word strange like she is about to break. In Billy's, like she is alone. This is history's cruelest duet. Two voices trembling loss. The word loss is really a villain. I've murmured it enough that, if I'm tired, I can trick myself into hearing love. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. So today I have the honor of introducing the remarkable Liv Kane. Born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, Liv Kane was first published by Young Pegasus Poetry and served as the inaugural writer-in-residence at the San Antonio Public Library. In 2019, she received the New York Life Award for her work. A current Kenyon Review intern, she studies English, film, and environmental studies at Kenyon in hopes of pursuing science writing postgrad. In her free time, Liv pretends she's near the ocean, reads parts of books, and looks forward to hugging people again. This afternoon, I'm overjoyed to expand Liv's list of accomplishments and add that she is now the author of her debut essay collection, Gulfwater, which she has spent the past year and a half working on as Sunset Press's creative nonfiction writer. In her breathtaking first book, Liv examines the natural worlds left behind after tragedy, giving faces to the aftermath of communal, familial, and individual disaster. Liv is a self-proclaimed poet turned essayist, and over the course of our 3-year friendship, I've been lucky enough to witness her complicated and striking metamorphosis from writing verse to writing prose. My first interactions with her took place in our first weeks at Kenyon, in the Ascension Seminar Room during Saturday afternoon spoken word poetry club meetings. Elegant, poised, and quietly confident, Liv intimidated me beyond all words until we began talking and taking walks around campus or hanging out in her Norton dorm room late at night, sharing book recs and poems we've written and hopes for our writing lives. I've seen Liv command the attention of an audience at an open mic night, but I've also experienced her thoughtfulness as an editor, her gentleness as a friend, and through it all, her immense curiosity towards who she is living and writing beside in the world. When I reflect on how Liv has interacted with her project for the past 20 months, I think of the words of Marvin Bell, who wrote, "The goal of the writer is to become less and less embarrassed about more and more." It hardly takes cracking the cover of Gulfwater to experience the tremendous courage at the heart of Liv's work. Instead of leaving her past unexamined, Liv dives off the coast of Texas and into the murky waters of her youth, allowing it to wash over her in all its stunning and painful hues because she views her past as worth interrogating and learning from and sharing. Liv possesses the heart of a poet, the stamina of an essayist, the forethought and light and versatility of a filmmaker. How lucky we are to experience her bravery, to hold her tenderness in our own hands, to carry her brilliance with us into uncharted waters. And so, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Liv Kane.
God damn. Thank you, Virginia. Also, just real quick, thank you to this lovely blanket of people and Tariq. You guys truly changed my world this year, and I can't thank you enough. I'll get to it. This one's for you, Mama, whenever you watch this. This is the first piece I wrote for Sunset, and it's entitled Graftage. In my grandmother's backyard, sitting heavy in a big clay pot beneath the shade of her vines, an orange tree is quietly pretending. Each leaf has tiny wings on waxy petioles. Its branches are thick and sandpapery and ruptured at intervals by 2-inch-long spikes. Its roots are knotted, hidden deep beneath the cracking soil, and in the spring, when you walk past, tiny white flowers follow your breeze to the ground. To most, it looks like nothing more than an orange tree. My mother stops me after I come back from the movies and asks why I'm smiling. I tell her I held his hand for the first time, and she screams into my right ear that I will get what I'm asking for. Years later, I realize she's finally right. But that night, I go to bed crying and screaming into my hands that the world is unfair, that my mother is wrong for thinking people are anything but good-intentioned. My grandfather thinks the tree has been grafted, maybe with a lime tree. I ask what this means, and he tells me that when you join two plant tissues in just the right way, with the right amount of love and scorn and fertilizer, they can sometimes grow together. You get a scion, a mixture of both individuals, ornamental cherry trees and weeping birches and thornless honey locusts. You grow a whole new beast. With careful hands, use the old, well-developed roots of one plant and the tender, newly sunlit shoots from the other. There's no need for hybrid seeds or the tedious process of cross-pollination. You simply take a rootstock and a single bud, twist them into one another, and wish that they get along well. You hope for only the desirable parts of each partner, like seedlessness or sweet juice. That night, you say a silent prayer that the fruit will be edible. My mother became a woman before she could even read. And when I turn the pages of my favorite books, I feel her eyes on the back of my neck, begging for me to stay where she can watch me, where she can protect me. When we look at photographs together, I marvel at how much she looks like my little sister does now, save for the deep pools of darkness between my mother's eyelashes, her limp smile. She's not quite a child, not quite an adult, not quite all there, but after half a century she has gotten awfully good at pretending. We ignore her sour rind, her thousands of acid-filled carpels. We call her pain seasonal. If you were to look closely at the fruit on our orange tree, you might guess that it was actually producing limes. The tiny oranges bud early in the spring, sometime before our banana leaves have thawed and well after the lamb's ears have lost their jewels of ice. They only grow to the size of a quarter, or maybe a $50, and they stay small and hard and angry throughout the season. My grandparents wait for them to turn orange and soften, wait for their skin to bloom into tiny supernovas of warm colors, wait for them to get more ripe, more round, more like the oranges our family expects. But come summer, we pick them anyways. Despite their confusing appearance, my grandmother plucks each little orb from the galaxy of green stars that decorate the tree's branches, cradling them in a sack like finch's eggs she might break. I imagine that she cuts them into perfect halves with a letter opener and squeezes them into her ice water, into her guacamole, over fish and rice and mixed in with tomato pastes. I know that they use the peculiar fruits in their vodka drinks, their gin and tonics, their mojitos, their Bloody Marys. Each orange might produce only a teaspoon of juice, but still it makes it into my grandfather's homemade limoncello. I almost always see a perfect half sitting on the counter when I come over, so I assume the fruits are used well, despite their ugliness. I am now afraid of every man I meet. When I forget this, it finds ways to smack me on the back of the head, ways to remind me where I come from, who I come from, what tired, withered stump my branches grew out of, whose sturdy walls, passed down to me on hands with green thumbs, kept my heart growing all directions but up. The flavor of our backyard oranges is so strong I can conjure it on my tongue even now. When I first bit into one, the juice burned my gums and seeped into a crack on the inside of my lip that I didn't know was there. I had expected the subtle sugar of clementines or even tangerines, but the explosion of tart sensation was almost painful. Its blood ate at the walls and the roof of my mouth, and the sour flesh sent a bolt of electricity up my nose. It didn't taste like a lime, exactly, and it sure as hell didn't taste like an orange. But I'd spent years watching our poor fruit tree waste all of its energy, pretending to produce something market grade, straining to grow something that the world might one day call beautiful. I wondered when the world might call something like me beautiful. A petrified young woman, a young lady of fear. I wondered if my frightened nature would always be undesirable as I finished the whole fruit, peeling it in one curlicue and swallowing its inside seeds and all. My daughter will not fear men as we do. I have decided that and that alone. I imagine that she will look into the eyes of predators with a spear in her hand and a shield over her chest, jeweled and jagged, gifted to her by mothers that came before. In my mind's eye, she will take self-defense classes and carry pink pepper spray and write poetry about love without being scared of what it means. She will run through fields and neighborhoods and parking lots at night with life in her eyes, knowing she has a small pocket knife in her shoe if she needs it. She will stand atop podiums and crouch beneath bleachers without ever questioning if she belongs in either place. Most of all, she will have an army of women behind her. Her mother and grandmother will stand guard as she sleeps, and I will allow her walls to have big, open windows so that her plants can touch the sun. She will not grow in inherited fear. She will simply live as if all people, regardless of the truth, are good-intentioned. It turns out grafted trees produce sterile seeds. You can expect many seasons of production, but you cannot replant and hope for the same growth next year. Once you graft two distinct lives together, their combined history comes to a screeching, sour halt. The scion will produce small, hardened, cardboard seeds that hold no life inside their shells. The new plant's existence will be cut short, its story abridged, its journey curtailed, its heritage hindered. It will be stunted by what might happen. From a botanist's perspective, newly grafted life exists as a unique, multicellular sculpture for only a few years. Then its stomata will wither away, its bilipid membrane unable to hold in all the energy of living plasma. It will return to the earth as dirt. It will be mere memory. But for those few years in our backyard, a grafted tree produces unfamiliar fruit, with skin that is easily punctured and rinds that burn your tongue. It grows with the resiliency of a Caribbean citrus and the consistency of an Indo-Chinese drupe. Combine the most cultivated fruit tree in the world with the least loved Skittles flavor, and you will get what grows in that clay pot. And without the perfectly grafted combination my grandfather spoke of, it would have never come to be. An equal amount of both parts, orange and lime. Without one, the rootstock might not have taken to the hardened soil. The sprout might have been ripped to shreds by hot summer winds. The innards between the tough plant walls might have been deadened by the first big freeze. Our ugly sapling survived simply because it had both trees running through each structured capillary of its being. And by now, I know better. As an outside observer, it's impossible to guess what makes up the inside of a life that has been grafted. It's impossible to see where the scarring of the incision once was, impossible to guess the strong, specific type of love it takes to help it all blossom. Impossible to convince outsiders that the monster mixed into the chloroplasts, into the very veins of this beautifully crippled tree, will do nothing to its fruit. We know that everyone who passes our orange tree will remain unconvinced of its history. They will think it is one thing or the other. I do not blame them. Instead, I tell them, look closely. It's still standing. Thank you.
Yes. Hi. My name is A. Sheikh. I was also one of the editor-in-chiefs of Sunset. I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for coming. Sunset Press was founded by 4 friends in a living room, and that was 2 years ago, and there was a pandemic, and to think that we have come here all together, unmasked, is just such a great luxury, and I just want to thank all of the writers, because I remember reading all of your work almost 2 years ago now, and thinking, will we ever get here? And the fact that we have is just a great ceremony. I just want to thank everyone for coming here.
So yeah, in the last 30 minutes, we're going to bring out some cake. We're going to have some book signing and book buying if people haven't done that yet. And just stick around and talk to writers and staff if you can. Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go get the cake.